Minister, I first of all want to say that this bill has been a long time coming, and it's been 9 months since NEFID recommended that discretionary elements of travel should end. And it is disappointing that 9 months later, the solutions in relation to checks and controls at airports are still not put in place. And yet today we are debating a bill which still does not solve the problem. It still half measures and will not deal with the real threat of the importation of the virus from outside of this state. Minister, it is important for me to point out that we are having this debate at a time of increased anger and frustration out there amongst the public. And they are really angry and frustrated because they want leadership. They want a coherent plan that they can have confidence in, and they need hope. And the reality is, Minister, they are not getting it from your government or from you as Minister for Health. And your government really needs to get its act together. You have to stop the mixed messages. You have to stop the poor communication. You have to stop with the botched media interviews. You have to stop with the half measures. And you need to be putting in place the solutions that people can have confidence in and that people can believe will actually not only get the numbers down low, but keep them low. As we gather here today, and as you know, Minister, people have been through a really horrific year. The sacrifices that people have made, people lost their jobs, people are stuck at home and they can't leave their home save for essential purposes. They've been homeschooling their children for months, and I welcome the moves in the right direction in terms of reopening schools. People have seen their businesses close. Many business people have not been able to open their door for almost a year. All of those sacrifices have taken their toll on people's mental health, and people socially, and people economically. And when they make those sacrifices, Minister, the very least that they expect is that the government will get its act together and the government will put in place solutions to problems that only the government can solve. So while people are playing their part, abiding by restrictions and getting the numbers down low, they have a real fear that because of the fact that the government is failing to make the investments in certain areas and to go the full distance in relation to mandatory testing and quarantine on travel, that their efforts will be in vain and that we will again lose control of the virus. And that is a really, really serious issue, because when people lose confidence in the process, I think that is very, very dangerous. I want people to have confidence in the government, to have confidence in the process, to have confidence in the ability of the government to be able to deliver. But I have to say that people are losing faith, if not many people have already lost faith. People cannot understand, Minister, when they are making the sacrifices that they are making, when they are told that you cannot stray outside of 5 kilometres from your own home, but yet we are still not putting in place mandatory hotel quarantine for all international travel. Now, how can that be the case, Minister? Can you explain to people, because it has not yet been explained, and sorry, if you can listen to what I'm saying, Minister, this is an important debate, and having conversations with backbenchers when we're having this debate isn't appropriate. So this is an important issue, and you've had your chance to have your say, and I've listened, Minister. So please, just if you can give me the respect of listening to what I'm saying. People cannot understand why your government is not going the full distance when they are making the sacrifices that they are making, and they're saying to us, how is it that people can still come in from some countries, are not subject to mandatory PCR testing, they're not subject to hotel quarantine. Yes, some people from some countries will, but we're still leaving ourselves exposed, and we still don't have sufficient checks and balances. I can't explain that to people, Minister. I don't have the answers for them, because there is no excuse. There is no reason. We in Sinn Féin are tabling a number of amendments to this bill, and we do so constructively. And we do so because we want a system that's fit for purpose. Minister, nearly 12 months on from this pandemic, and you still haven't got your act together in relation to sharing data with your colleague in the north in relation to travel. That's on you, Minister. You cannot blame anybody else. That's under your purview. That's your job. The Minister for Health in the North has reached out time and again on this issue, and yet you, as Minister, and your government have not responded. So we're tabling an amendment in relation to ensuring that we have that level of data sharing. We are tabling an amendment to make sure that anybody coming into this state, irrespective of what country they're coming from, should have to be subject to mandatory hotel quarantine for all non-essential travel. Because if you don't do that, Minister, you're making a mockery of the whole process, because you cannot enforce people quarantining at home. It is impossible to do it. It is the type of nod and wink solutions that has got us into the mess that we are in. So unless the solutions are real, unless the solutions are robust, unless the solutions are effective, then we're going to continue to see more cases of the virus imported, and that, it has to be said, is on your government and your failure to act, Minister, in these areas. It is also absolutely extraordinary that even in this bill, there is still not mandatory PCR testing post-arrival for people who are quarantining at home. It is still only advisory. How can I explain that to somebody who are making the sacrifices that they are making at the moment, Minister? How can you explain that to people? How can anybody in this chamber explain that when we know what we have been through? Minister, the only way that we will be able to lift restrictions in the summer, and I want to see people have that hope. Everybody wants to have a sense that come the summer, we may be in a position to ease restrictions and give people their lives back. But they won't do it if the capacity isn't there in terms of the ingredients that are necessary for maximum suppression. I got figures back this week from the HSE in relation to testing and tracing staff. The target by the HSE set months ago was 2,000 swabbers and contact tracers, and yet less than 1,600 have been employed. So again, when people are making sacrifices, when they're playing their part, the government is still falling short on test and trace. We heard from healthcare trade unions tell us that we still don't have serial testing in hospitals. I mean, what in God's name is going on when we're not even hunting down the virus in hospitals? We need to use test and trace to hunt down the virus when numbers are low, and then put us in a position where we can stay ahead of the virus, as opposed to losing control, which we have done in the past. So there are obvious ingredients of a maximum suppression strategy, which were given to us at the very start of this whole process. Test and trace, and yet we've never got it right, and that's on you and your government. All-island responses, we've never got it right in terms of sharing data. That's on you and your government. Travel checks that we're debating here today at ports and airports, we're still not getting it right. It is infuriating for people that even today, when we're debating this bill, there is no commencement date on when the bill will come into effect. We have no idea. We're being told, and many of us were on a briefing with some of your senior civil servants in relation to this, the detail of the bill is still being worked out. We have no idea when this will come into effect. I can't tell anybody what day, what week, what month we're actually going to see hotel quarantining. Maybe you have the answer, Minister. Hasn't been given to us. So how does that inspire confidence? How can I leave this chamber today and say, we had a debate, there's a bill before the Dáil, I have no idea when it's going to come into operation. I have no idea if all of the detail has been worked out. In fact, I have a good idea that most of it hasn't been worked out. There is still a lot of work to be done, and that's 9 months after you were told by NPHET to remove the discretionary elements of travel in relation to testing post-arrival and in relation to quarantine. So I have to say, Minister, you really need to get your act together. The government really needs to pull itself together once and for all, because people are really angry and frustrated, and I have to say, I don't blame them, because when they're making the sacrifices they're making, the very least they expect is that you will do your job and the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach will do their job. So please stop competing for headlines. Please stop with the botched media interviews. Please stop with the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach and the leader of the Green Party and others competing as to who will be the first to get to a microphone or the first to talk to a journalist about what may or may not be in any plan. and give people the hope that they need, because that's really what's lacking from you and your government, Minister. And I have to say there has to be a big, big step change in the weeks and months ahead. Gurv Magat.